Janet Yellen just got done with the emergency meeting with Jerome Powell, Gary Gensler, the head of the FDIC, and others. And I want to talk about what she said. This was not a planned meeting. This is something that they just decided on today. It's closed to the public, and they just gave their statement for what happened right as the market closed. Now, I want to talk about that and talk about how this affects crypto, how this affects the overall market. And it's going to be a short video, but if you don't mind, please hit the subscribe button underneath the video. I'm making this as soon as the market closed because this is exactly when they posted. So if you want future videos like this that are very short and to the point, not trying to wait until my video tomorrow, I'm just making this after going to the grocery store because it was really important for me to get you the information as soon as possible. Again, hit that subscribe button. And I just sold part of a crypto that I've talked about a lot on the channel. I'm still holding some of it, but in case you want to know which one that is, you can go down to the Patreon. I might make a video about it in the future, but honestly, I get so much hate when I sell a crypto or sell part of a crypto that I'm not so sure I'll go through it. So if you want to know for sure, you can check out the link to the Patreon. Now, Janet Yellen just conveyed or just announced a meeting here today. Basically, I forgot the name of the council, or that it's the Financial Stability Council, essentially. And it's with some big heavy hitters in the government. A lot of people that have to do with money supply, a lot of people that have to do with securities. Like I said, FDIC, SEC, the Fed, the Treasury Department, others are all meeting here today. Closed meeting was not expected, but obviously with Deutsche Bank collapsing or falling down basically a lot today, the credit default swaps blowing up. Basically, people are expecting them to be one of the next banks that drop. With a lot of other banks falling here in the US, we have not seen them meet, this council meet in about 10 days, this committee. And the last time that they met, they actually announced that they were going to bail out depositors at a couple major banks here in the US. So usually when something like this happens, when there's an emergency meeting on a Friday or Saturday or Sunday, it's something big. Now, some people are expecting that they were going to drop rates. Some people are actually, money markets are now pricing in that they're going to have to drop by June. They're going to have to drop 25 basis points, or they're going to. A lot of people are pricing in a 1.2% decrease in rates by next year this time. Some people are thinking that this weekend they're going to cut rates because they just raised them. I don't think they're going to cut rates this weekend. I think that would make it look really bad if they raise them and then realize, we can't do that. We can't raise 25 basis points. So what did they say here today? What did Janet Yellen just tell us? They basically said, banks are fine. That's exactly what they've said. Janet Yellen, Jerome Powell, whoever's been asked about it, have been saying basically you should trust your banks. They're in a strong financial position. We're going to supply ample liquidity, and will backstop depositors. They have not said they will backstop all depositors. They've been very clear about that. But they have said that depositors should feel safe. And they basically alluded that if more banks that could cause contagion, they've actually said this, that if a bank can cause contagion, they will back it up. And at this point, I think any bank really in the US would cause contagion and cause people to freak out. A lot of people will freak out if their deposits aren't actually insured, even if it's over the 250K limit, because then who can you really trust, right? Who can you trust if you can't trust banks? And to be clear, I want to add this. The reason that this should scare you is because they're not telling us what they're actually talking about. Anytime you have an emergency meeting like this, everything's not fine, right? You don't call an emergency meeting with really important people because you're saying, everything is fine in the banking sector. Everything's fine. With the Fed continuing to raise rates, you call this because there's an emergency. There are buildings on fire. There are issues that they have to address, and they're getting ready for something. The scary thing is they're not telling us what that is. Now, I'm not trying to spread fear. I think that the government, I think that the markets will be fine over the long term, but I think you need to be ready. And how am I getting ready? I'm going to tell you a little bit further into the video, but I think cash is important. I think certain assets, holding certain assets that will do really well once they start pumping in more liquidity and more money and start printing again, that's going to be important too. But keeping some cash around at a time like this it's pretty important, I think, because we may get some crazy sales on some assets here soon. I'm not saying everything's going to crash, but at a time like this, you don't know where something's going to collapse and then the government's going to step in and save it, but where you could get a huge discount and a really good price on some assets. So having that kind of liquidity is important, but I'm not going out and selling stuff right now. I just have some money sitting there begging for a new home because I am looking to deploy here with some of this craziness. Whenever there's volatility, there are some good times to be buying into assets, and I think that time's coming here soon. This weekend, a lot of people are thinking they might have to do an emergency rate cut. I don't think that's likely. But on the All In podcast that was just released, they talked about what this means. What is the government going to do? Because they're breaking so many different markets. It's not just banking. It's also the real estate market, specifically the commercial real estate market. And they talk about on the podcast how a lot of these big cities are having people move out of them. They can't get good returns. They have to get a new loan here soon, but they're not making money at these higher rates. And basically they're going to go in default. They're going to go to banks. Banks don't want to hold these properties, so they're going to sell them at a fire sale. No one wants to buy it. There's no liquidity in the system right now. And they're calling on the All In podcast for the federal government, or they think the federal government is going to probably put $2 to $3 trillion towards these commercial buildings. And the fact is, they have to kind of backstop because they can't have people leave these cities and then lose taxes. They can't lose more growth at a time like this. So this is going to be really fascinating. We might see a lot more printing. I mean, just over the last week, we've seen $100 billion go on the Fed balance sheet. But if the government starts backstopping with trillions of dollars worth of real estate because they have to keep interest rates high, obviously, risk on assets will just moon. Bitcoin will moon because it basically shows that they're going to continue to print money, debase the currency. And what does really well with ample liquidity and with debasement of the US dollar? Bitcoin. Everyone wants their hands on some Bitcoin right now. And of course, we have seen Bitcoin move up a lot here over the last couple weeks. And I actually bought some Bitcoin here today. I sold the crypto that was not Bitcoin, and I bought some Bitcoin with it because I do think Bitcoin is going to continue moving up over the next couple of years. I don't know what's going to happen in the next month by any means, but I think Bitcoin is definitely one of the safer cryptocurrencies, probably the safest cryptocurrency at a time like this. I think it's actually safer than stablecoins in a lot of ways, but I want to get my hands on some more, especially if they're going to keep on printing. But let me know your thoughts on this underneath the video. Again, I sold a different crypto, so I'm not pumping in new money into crypto at this point here today. But I did have to pick up some more Bitcoin with what I sold because it's just a crazy outsized bet. But what do you think about Janet Yellen? I don't know. If you're calling an emergency meeting and then you say everything's fine, something doesn't add up, right? It's a closed door meeting with some of the most important people in the U.S. banking sector, in securities. Just doesn't seem like you call that if everything's fine. Sounds like maybe they're just putting everything in place so that way if one more bank goes down or if there's another domino that falls, they have everything set up so that way they can take emergency action, kind of like they did last week, right? Where all of a sudden they started on a Sunday, the Fed announced that they were going to increase liquidity swaps, basically liquidity between different countries with the US dollar. I don't know. Maybe they're getting ready for something like that. Maybe they're getting ready for something else. Let me know in the comment section if you know something that I don't, or if you have some suggestions on what they might be doing. Be careful of the scammers in the comment section. If you guys want, you can check out the Patreon, again, to see exactly what I buy and sell. And you can also check out the links to moomoo and Webull and M1 Finance if you want some free stocks. Thank you so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.